Hi there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview of the First Berserker, Kazan. So this is the newest Souls-like, I suppose, coming out of Nexon of all people, and pretty good first effort from what I understand. It's not the first in this universe, this fighting and dungeons or something like that. As best as I can understand, it's sort of an IP that they've stood up themselves. They've done a couple of games around it that are more like fighting, side-scroller, beat-em-up games, all sorts of stuff in that space, but they've decided to, transplant that lore and make their own kind of thing into the burgeoning, exploding market that is Souls-likes. And they've kind of knocked it out of the park. It's a very, very good first entry. I had one, I guess you could call it a hiccup. I got skill checked really hard by the big filter boss called Viper, who I reckon will live on in infamy. I doubt that it's just uniquely me that needs to get good. In fact, I feel like there's some balancing issues. Perhaps he's over-tuned. He shouldn't be that far early in the piece. The other bosses that I have subsequently killed past him were much more of a cakewalk, and I feel like maybe the devs expected the game to have clicked a little bit more, or who can truly speculate? But in the scheme of things, that's the only real sort of negative, I guess. It's a great boss fight, it really is, but people are going to belt their head against the wall for a couple of hours in some cases. So yeah, I wouldn't say super beginner friendly. There is an easy mode, right? So there's that. I haven't given it a go. I was tempted to give it a go just for curiosity's sake. And there are some helpful tools that, in hindsight, you could probably farm the currency for summoning a helper spirit to beat that boss, but the game, like I said, didn't telegraph that very well. It was introduced like 30 seconds before you fought the boss, and in subsequent boss fights, that mechanic was actually really interesting and cool, and we might talk about that. But look, I don't want to get too hung up on it. It's got one big glaring thing that might be the talk of the town, and that is an excellent boss fight, arguably a bit too early in the game. Now, if you're new around the channel, I'm doing an experimental scoring system where I'm filling a list of games over the course of the year. I'm going to cover 100 and rank them from 1 to 100. Effectively, all it really is a recommendation of what I would recommend to you on the street as the next game that you get. So I'm placing this at 89%, which is to say under Dynasty Warriors Origins and above Assassin's Creed Shadows. So look, let's do a bit of a top-down, right? Is this going to convert you onto Souls-likes? Like, if you don't like Souls-likes, God, how many times am I going to bloody say like? Will this game turn you around? No, it won't. And I would also say, if for whatever reason this one jumps out at you and you've never done one before, I don't have the best suggestion off the top of my head, but there are probably better on-ramping games, better baby's first Souls-like type games. So this is definitely tricky, it's definitely hard. Dare I say, a bit more veteran-leaning. I'm still a normie, by the way. Like, I'm not going to do no-hit new game plus 9 runs. That's not me, that's not this channel. But I do play a lot of the Souls-like games that come out. So it's tough. Buyer beware if you're new to the space. It might be worth exploring that I see the way Souls-like games exist now is kind of in two camps. Again, it's been a burgeoning genre for, 10 years? Exploding with lots of imitators, lots of twists on the formula, but the one main breakaway group from the more trad Souls-likes would be more of a character action Souls-like. These ones, probably the most contemporary example would be Black Myth Wukong, where that's about, a limited sort of weapons set, but it's more about packing skills into them and coming up with combos that you can slide in between the enemy's relentless attacks. Much more fast-paced and punchy, about picking your opportunity and punishing the enemy for it. Whereas if I were to contrast it against your more traditional Souls-likes, even up to Elden Ring, to be honest, with those, the diversity of gameplay complexity is found in the options, i.e. you could go sword and board, you could go bloody dagger, you can go ranged bows and arrows or crossbows, you can go a mage, you can do miracles. So you sort of see there's a wider breadth of selection, but at the actual tactical interplay, once you've got your, short sword selected, a lot of it is learn the enemy's moveset, let him do his thing, then you have a go, squeeze in a couple of left triggers or right triggers, whichever you decide to go with, and rinse and repeat. Bit of an I go, you go, deliberately clunky interplay that you build around. So there's a pace difference to them, and this definitely leans in, that other direction. It's very punchy, very fast, the enemy is relentless, and they will punish you unbelievably so if you drop the ball, and you will, and They might lead to some frustration, but inversely, there are people that are going to be champing at the bit going, yep, that's exactly what I want, salivating at the idea of more challenge. And while I don't necessarily get into the chest-beating ego bullshit that gets a bit out of control, people saying you can only play a Souls-like game a certain way or it doesn't count, those people are wankers. However, there is a kernel in there in that it's nice to have games that are challenging and being celebrated, being good at them, as opposed to a lot of Western development these days. It's getting a bit sloppy, it's getting a bit weak, storytelling in favor of challenging core gameplay. It kind of leans a little bit towards boss rush as well. Like, I wouldn't explicitly say that it's a boss rush, but the moments in between, the environments are fairly linear, especially in the early going. Like, they're okay, there's some back and forth and shortcuts and all that, but in the scheme of things, it does feel like they've very much hung their hat on the spectacle of the boss fights, which they're wonderful, they're great, they are. But I also do caution against that sort of development because you miss out on some of the magic in between. I know it's very kooky the way Souls-like stories are played out and drip-fed in these sort of esoteric little notepad entries that make no fucking sense unless you're Vati Vidya and make a 10-hour video trying to understand it. But there's still a certain charm and a mystique to building the world out that way and taking your time to enjoy those environs. And I feel like that's sort of missing a little bit here in this game. The trip between bosses isn't super standout, and to risk a meta-analysis, it feels like, to the developers, it feels like something like this might be a chore. But yeah, look, you've essentially got 3 types of weapons. They're a bit of a holy trinity going around the 3 scale stats that you can pick for them. I went with the kind of dark horse default weapon, which is the sword and axe, and I've gone more into a block build. Very unusual for me. I'm much more of a sort of dodge opportunist, usually. So it's been a bit of a curve, I'll confess. The other weapons are like a great sword, which is just really punish and build poise while you charge attacks. And the other one's a spear, which is more of a stamina drain bully weapon. Poke, 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 try and guard break them and then punish on the back of that. They're all pretty unique and they all have pretty robust trees, just like Wukong. And there's a big sort of leaning into and favoring of interplay chaining, left clicks and right clicks and charged right clicks. So leaning into that kind of brawler, fighting game, even a character action game like the original God of War. Not quite juggling, but I think maybe you get the picture. So it does stand apart and do its own flavor. It's kind of cool, I like it. However, the learning curve was steep for me specifically. Before I wrap up, because again, I'm coming at this from a normie, so my focus is different from the super sweat channels that are gonna New Game Plus the shit out of this. I do want to talk about the summons or the companions or whatever you want to call it, the things that will make the boss fight easier. Now, part of what made that first boss fight so hard for me, and I suspect will for many others, is because that system is so late introduced, just before you walk through the door. And I'm going off memory because it didn't really click to me until after I beat the boss that maybe I could go back and farm the audacity. Oh, I can't remember. That's not what it is. Whatever, there's a resource that you can farm. And going forward, I found that helpful and I've leveraged that in boss fights. But I'll just discuss it here, right? And maybe you're stuck on this boss and you don't even realize he's got a second phase yet. Oh my god, my heart sank when I realized that. Maybe this will help you retroactively. So there's no multiplayer or anything like that. Don't freak out. You can't get invaded. It's all voluntary. But as you move through the game, it introduces this mechanic where they're like the bloodstains of dead fallen friends from a Souls-like game. And presumably the game's not explicit about it, but it is made out of a character build nearby. So let's just assume someone died nearby and it's picked up that build, because it depends on the weapon, etc. You can go over to these things and activate them, and they are farmable. You can reset the level, go back to bonfires, that sort of stuff. And it will spawn one of these phantoms, a mirror of you, or rather a mirror of someone's build set. And you fight them, and when you beat it, its battles aren't that tough, to be honest. It's all right. They'll drop this currency, which can be spent in one of 2 ways. One, when you go to the front door of a boss fight, you can use it to buy one of those spirits to help you. And again, he'll have a random build set. He might be spear, he might be greatsword, who knows? And while the AI is not exactly super duper, it does the most important thing that I think most people will at least understand in a boss fight, is that it splits aggro. So your dude can be dumb as anything, but if he can draw the aggro off of the boss for 10 seconds, he's probably earned his weight in gold already. However, on top of that, you can also spend that currency back at the main hub, which is kind of reminiscent of the old Demon Souls bloody, with the blind chick in the dark place. I haven't played it since I imported it in a shady back alley place friggin' decades ago. But anyway, I digress. You can go to this place, talk to Sheila. She's got a book. Who cares? It's all Souls-like. It doesn't have to make sense. And you can spend that currency to kind of meta upgrade all future summons that help you in the boss. Maybe they have more stamina or health or damage. It's pretty cool. So there's this little RPG mechanic within the helper system. It's definitely not overpowered. They're not going to one-shot or one-man the boss, but they are going to draw aggro and hold their own for a little bit, which gives you a little bit of space to punish the backside of the enemy. I think it's a really clever, novel way of taking that system and approaching it without kind of breaking it, but also giving players that may be struggling, or if we're just going to be honest, boss fights all good and well, but 2 hours of the boss fight I don't think is very fun. For some people that are anal about it, that's fine, but for me, if I'm still struggling after a few attempts on the boss fight, I don't see a problem with hiring one of these NPCs in to get through it a little bit easier. But look, I just throw that in because anecdotally I found that really interesting and to be one of the cooler things that I doubt many will highlight because of the stigma that often is around using helper ghosts, or whatever you want to bloody call it. Mimics, I think is what they called it in Elden Ring. Anyway, such are my thoughts and my rankings. It's a great game. Buyer beware. If you sit outside of the normal paradigm that would jump on this game, tread carefully. Gentle recommendation. But if you hoover this shit up and you just love going through Souls-like games over and over again, you've probably already picked it up anyway. Anyway, team, much as leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.